for the final time, you found yourself on another edition of Let 'Em Know Kings in a 313. I want to be perfectly clear. I am not ending the podcast as a whole. I am not ending my podcasting part of my life. I am ending a relationship with a team that I wanted to follow, but I am instantly and surely regretting it. The Chicago Bulls beat down the Detroit Pistons tonight by a final score of 119 to 108. I'm going to break this down, I'm going to try to break it down, but I am going to speak words out of my heart that I never thought I would say, considering the fact that this was a team that I grew up with. I'll explain everything that's on my mind and try my best to break down this game on the last edition of Let 'Em Know Kings in a 313. Let's go. And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the place to be, it is that time for the post-game reaction podcast to the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and the Pistons from the D. This is Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3-1-3. Hey everybody, and welcome to the final edition of Let 'Em Know Kings in a 313, your final episode of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and Detroit Pistons post-game reaction podcast. I'm your host, Skylar Weisberg. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show on such short and abrupt notice. I am literally recording this after this game was over, as the Chicago Bulls took down the Detroit Pistons by a final score of 119 to 108. And before I explain everything, you can find Let 'Em Know Kings. Well, I'm going to give you the new title of the show starting on Tuesday, but you can find this podcast on Amazon Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Pandora, Spotify, and wherever else you want to listen to this show. Give the show a follow on the platforms. Turn on your notifications so you know about the next episode. Please rate, spread the word out to your friends, and give the new name of this show a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. I'm going to give you the details of the new show coming up in just a second. And I want to thank each and every one of you that have tuned in to this program of me covering the Cleveland Cavaliers and Sacramento Kings. Those two teams, they're locks, right? They're locks for life, and I'm going to stay with them. As far as the Pistons, I don't know anymore. I don't know if I can handle watching a Pistons team that, yes, they are young. Yes, they are energetic. Yes, Asar Thompson is an absolute stud. I get it. But the same crap that is hurting the Detroit Pistons is hurting them again. Fouls, turnovers, lack of discipline, lack of effort. And I want to give the Chicago Bulls a whole lot of credit, and here's why. They won this game when they outscored the Detroit Pistons 33-19 in the second quarter. As soon as I saw that score, I was like, maybe Chicago has a chance. Maybe the Bulls will show Detroit how to play winning basketball. And I want to give the Bulls credit. Even though they are 4-6, they didn't look like a 4-6 team. They're inconsistent, but they have fight. They have some fight. They have some grit. they have some passion, and they have some heart. And for those of you that may or may not know, let me tell you a very, very brief story. When I was a little kid, think of 3rd or 4th grade, right? I had to get surgery in both of my legs. And it was an incorrective surgery to the point where I couldn't walk for a couple of weeks. I was laying down in the living room. I think we made a hospital bed in that living room. And my dad and I, it was June of 2004. And my dad turned on the NBA Finals. The game that inspired me to fall in love with basketball. The LA Lakers with Shaquille O'Neal and the late great Kobe Bryant against the Detroit Pistons with one of the best starting fives of all time. Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, Chauncey Big Shot Billups, Rasheed, and Big Ben Wallace. My favorite player of that year was Ben Wallace. And I was watching that team literally go to work. Their defense was absolutely exceptional. Their discipline was absolutely outstanding. Their attention to detail was absolutely immaculate. And they had a coach in Larry Brown who knew the game, who knew what winning basketball was all about. Now, with this Pistons team, they don't got it. I don't know what to tell you guys. They don't got it. And when I came back to the Pistons before the season, right, I thought that this was going to work out. I thought this was going to be a different version of the Detroit Pistons, a new era of the Detroit Pistons. We got Monty Williams as our head coach. I was hoping that they could change the culture. I was hoping that it would spark a new generation of Detroit basketball. But unfortunately for the Pistons, they played absolutely lifeless. And my girl and I were watching the game, and we couldn't believe what we saw. Of course, we were rooting for the Chicago Bulls because Chicago, Illinois is our adopted city. And we virtually adopted the United Center in Chicago, Illinois as our home arena. And I was watching the Pistons look absolutely lifeless today. The biggest stat of this game, only 7 turnovers for the Chicago Bulls. 16 of them for Detroit. The Chicago Bulls scored 25 points off the 16 turnovers for the Pistons. The Pistons only scored 9. I mean, honestly, if both teams wouldn't started as cold as they were, you could have argued that the Chicago Bulls might have dropped 135 on Detroit, maybe 140. But I'm pushing it because the Bulls right now don't have a good offense. But they were the better team. They were the better team in every single aspect of the game for the most part. The rebounds were the only positive metric for the Detroit Pistons, 49-40. Particularly 16 offensive rebounds. I think the Bulls need to work on team rebounding. And I'm going to get into that when I get to the new show that I'm going to talk about in just a second. But what I will also say is, to Asar Thompson, Kevin Knox, and Alec Burks. Honestly, the only 3 Detroit Pistons that showed up tonight, I am sorry that I am ending my relationship with a childhood team this way. But you drove me to a breaking point. The Pistons literally drove me into a breaking point tonight. I'm trying not to cry, y'all, but I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to curse. I'm not going to rant. This is just straight from my heart. And tonight, the Pistons broke my heart. And when someone or something breaks my fragile heart, I can't go on supporting that team. I can't go on supporting a team that is lifeless. I can't go on supporting a team that doesn't show up. And with the exception of Burks, Knox, and Asar Thompson, nobody showed up. Nobody showed up for Detroit. All credit to the Bulls. I mean, DeMar DeRozan was fantastic. Vucevic was big late. Zach LaVine was big late. Ayo Dosunmu had a really good game in the absence of Alex Caruso. The Bulls wanted him more. The Bulls wanted the game more. And ultimately, the Chicago Bulls wanted my coverage more. The rest of the stats, 48% from the field for Chicago compared to 43% for the Detroit Pistons. The three-point percentage, Chicago did slightly better percentage-wise, 36% from three. They are not a good three-point shooting team by any stretch of imagination, but they did decent. They did decent in knocking down their threes compared to 34.5% for the Detroit Pistons. The free throw percentage, pretty even by a tenth of a percentage. The rebounds, like I said, 49-40 in favor of Detroit. The assists, 26-22 in favor of the Pistons. The steals, 12-4 in favor of the Bulls. That was another big factor in this game. The Chicago Bulls were swiping the balls of the Pistons all night long. The turnovers, like I said, 16-7. The points in the paint, 52-46 in favor of Detroit. The fouls, 21-19 in favor of Chicago, but that's misleading when you allow 16 turnovers, you get the ball swiped 12 times, and you allow 25 points off their turnovers. Pretty pathetic effort by the Pistons, if you ask me. And Monty Williams, I understand that you're a good coach, right? I understand that you were a former NBA Coach of the Year. I understand that you're trying to build a culture in Detroit. But my God, I cannot support a team that doesn't listen to you. I can't. I grew up on Detroit. I love the PA announcer John Mason. And maybe I will watch them as far as like supporting them as a fan. But as far as like my podcasting thing, the relationship with the Detroit Pistons is over after tonight. It is over. Isaiah Stewart, thank you for showing up. 17 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists. Cade Cunningham was absolutely atrocious. 10 points, 0 for 5 from 3, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. I think the Bulls did a really good job of containing him. Kevin Knox, he did really well in his first game back, 18 points with 3 rebounds. Alec Burks, welcome back to the lineup, 16 points, 2 for 6 from 3. We needed you big time. But the story of the game was all about the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan nearly dropped 30. Nearly dropped 30 on the boys. 29 points with an assist, a rebound, 2 for 3 from three-point range, and 4 big-time blocks. That's what I'm talking about. That is winning basketball right there. Vucevic, 21 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Zach LaVine, 19 points. He nearly dropped 20 with 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. Ayo Dosunmu, really good job off the bench. 13 points, 4 steals, 3 assists. Andre Drummond, a good game against his former team, 11 points with 13 boards. Look, Detroit, you made me do this. You made me do this, boys. I grew up watching an iconic all-time team that played with heart, that played with fight, and played with purpose. What I've watched these last 10 games, no heart, no fight, no competitiveness, no grit, no togetherness as a team. The only one who's got it is Asar Thompson. I believe Asar Thompson is going to be an absolute star. But as far as the team goes, I'm done. I'm done covering you. I might be done with the Locked On Pistons podcast. I'm just straight up done. I'm straight up done with the Pistons. I came back to the 313 hoping to have a sweet childhood reunion, but ultimately it turned into a nightmare. And honestly, for Detroit, I hope you do better when I'm not covering you, because maybe that's going to happen. But I can't cover a team that is absolutely heartless. And unfortunately, the Pistons are the most heartless team in the NBA right now. And that's why, while the iron is hot, I'm going to leave the Detroit Pistons and I'm going to go to another direction. And ladies and gentlemen, starting on Tuesday, the new direction is this. I will still be covering the Cleveland Cavaliers and Sacramento Kings. But starting on Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, I will be covering the Chicago Bulls. Like I said earlier, Chicago, Illinois is my adopted winter city. The United Center is my home arena. And they say that home is where the heart is, right? And there are times that I gotta support my home. And this is one of those cases. That's going to do it for the final edition of Let 'Em Know Kings in a 313. This has been your post-game reaction podcast covering the Detroit Pistons, Sacramento Kings, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. You can find this show on Amazon Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Pandora, Spotify, wherever else you want to listen to this show. Give the show a follow on those platforms. Turn on your notifications so you know about the next episode. Please rate, spread the word out to your friends, and give this show a 5-star review. I'm Skylar Weisberg. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you on Tuesday for the debut of Let 'Em Know Kings United, the post-game reaction podcast covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and now the Chicago Bulls.